today. We're going to kick off by inviting the audience to go back in time to 2013 in particular. And this is when the UK column had started to warn about the British government's use of applied behavioural psychology. This was the Express headline, "Nudge Unit to Become a Business." And we said that the Conservatives had unleashed an applied behavioural psychology program on the public, boasting, and that is absolutely correct, boasting that they could change our views and values. Well, it was really only the UK column that was warning about the brainwashing aspect, and I'm going to qualify that description in just a moment. But of course, where the public need to go, if you've no idea what we're talking about, is the MINDSPACE document that was published by the Cabinet Office back in 2010. MINDSPACE, influencing behaviour through public policy. And if I bring in a bit of detail on this, David Halpin was the key man. And if you have a look at what's on screen at the moment, so he was the chief strategist at the Prime Minister's Strategy Unit between 2001 and 2007. So this use of applied psychology to help a political agenda came from within the Cabinet Office. But look at the sort of people who were involved. Ivo Flaev, who was senior lecturer in psychology at the Faculty of Medicine at Imperial College London. So senior people. But where the real dangers lie was actually, and I think quite remarkably, set out in the MINDSPACE document itself. Let's bring this bit up on screen, highlight it. It says the potential for controversy. Policymakers know that attempts to change citizens' behaviour may well be controversial. And so therefore, the public should be consulted. Well, of course, the public weren't consulted. And then we see here the absolute danger in what they're doing, because it talks about automatic effects on people. Here it says a lack of conscious control also has implications for consent and freedom of choice. So these people using a weapon, which means that the public may not fully realise that their behaviour is being changed, or at least how it's being changed. And I look at the audience today and I say, do you really trust any politician that's in Westminster at the moment, either or any party? Do you trust those people to change your behaviour in a way you don't even realise that your mind is being changed? This is, Ben, this is shocking stuff, even when you go back and have a look. Now, following the 2010 reports, the Behavioural Insights team, who was the government's core, I'm going to call them brainwashing team, they produced another report here, Behavioural Government, using behavioural science to improve how governments introduce their policy. And if the audience wants to know what we're really talking about, then no better place to go than lockdown, when the government scientific team of SAGE, backed up by SPI-B, and this included psychological experts, minuted a meeting where it was talking about amazing things. It was talking about using education to change the way people behaved, using persuasion, using an incentivization system, and here is one of the really dangerous ones, coercing people into doing what the government wanted and enabling and facilitating other parts of the program. And under persuasion, the remarkable sentence is here: the perceived level of personal threat needs to be increased amongst those who are complacent, using hard-hitting emotional messaging. This was effectively saying we're going to use fear in order to get the public to do as we tell them. Ben, incredible stuff, isn't it, when you see it in black and white like this?
It is incredible stuff, and it's absolutely everywhere in the system. Actually, I remember being in the advertising industry when the MINDSPACE document landed back in 2010, and when the ad agencies got their hands on that, they essentially turned themselves into the behaviour change industry. It's actually how they talk about it.
Yes. Okay, well, let's move on to the present day. And this is the headline. Now, this actually started to happen at the end of 2024, but it's rolling. It's a steamroller in 2025 in Starmer's government. And basically, a new media unit has been set up with virtually a £700,000 budget, as we're going to see lots of money available. Now, this is one of the key men who's mentioned in regard to heading up Keir Starmer's Downing Street operation. And the best we can say about this man is we don't know anything about him. We don't know anything about the thousands of other unelected and unaccountable people, but should we trust him? Now, in respect of the new media unit, this is what Keir Starmer had to say. The way people consume information has changed. If we're going to rebuild trust, we need to meet people where they are on the platforms they use. Interesting admission by Keir Starmer that the politicians, and that includes himself, people do not trust them. He goes on to say this will bring together data analysts, creative content producers, and paid media specialists to reach and connect with the public in a much more effective way. But what does he really mean? Well, this is what I think he's talking about. And these are my words. Our propaganda and psychological reframing program, but the legacy media, the mainstream media, is failing. We need to spread our propaganda to the social media channels. And we'll add a bit to that. The social media channels are where people are watching and listening to real news and analysis. And we, the new Labour government, have to disrupt this. So that is what I think that Keir Starmer is really talking about. But if we get deeper into proper detailed analysis, we can have a look at this parliamentary website, which is talking about questions that have been asked. And in June 2021, the question was being asked about a spend of almost £236.5 million on 1,500 people who were part of the government's policy objectives. So these were people using these techniques in order to produce policy that the public were going to accept. And then in this part of the text, I'm just going to read part of the screen. It is impossible to tell from the annual report and accounts how much support in terms of staff and budget is dedicated to the Prime Minister. So we don't even know where this money is going. And disaggregating support for the Prime Minister and the rest of the government would not fully resolve the problems of transparency and accountability we've highlighted. And if I do the last one here, this is wrong. It undermines both ministerial accountability to Parliament and collective responsibility on the part of the Cabinet. So we are not allowed to know what the government is doing, but what we do know is the government is using pretty vicious applied psychology to change the way we think and behave, and we're not even going to know. Now, one of the problems at the moment is that even the Lords, never mind the members of Parliament themselves, the Lords don't really understand what's happening. This is a question from Lord Alton of Liverpool, and he was asking His Majesty's government whether the new media unit based in the Cabinet Office and the individuals within it, including the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, have an exemption to use TikTok on government devices. Now, the problem is he doesn't even know the right question to ask because he's heard about TikTok and the Chinese. So he probably thinks this is a security issue, but actually this is to do with a constitutional issue where the government is working to attack its own citizens. And the reply from Baroness Twycross is particularly revealing because she says the policy on the use of TikTok on government devices hasn't changed. She must have been very happy because essentially there was a question which was irrelevant. She didn't have to worry about the response. But if we sum up here, even the Institute of Government in its latest reports is saying that it really can't unravel the secret workings of the state, and it's running conferences to try and ascertain how it works. But if we look at the Behavioural Insights team itself, they claim that they're independent now. But if we look at the website, they're independent and partners of the Cabinet Office. So that does not appear to be true. And this is very telling. If we look at where they're now operating in the world, let's expand that on screen. So the black is Behavioural Insights team projects, the dark blue is offices, and the light blue is local staff presence. What started in British government now spread across the world. And interestingly, in Europe, the two key offices are in UK and France. And I'm specifically going to say that is because that the government here was working with Sarkozy's expert on brainwashing way back in 2012, 2015. So Germany was left out, although we can see that Germany is being used for applied behavioural psychological experiments. And on that note, I'd like to welcome our guest presenter today, Jobs Landgräber.